Welcome back to another edition of the Bebo Knows podcast. This is your host, Brian Bullock, and with me today I have Kevin, also known as KJHOGO on Twitter. How you doing tonight, Kevin?
Good. Thanks for having me on. I've been listening to this for years now, so it's cool to be on the other side and hopefully can live up to some of the all-star performances that you've had on here.
Well, I remember the first time I saw my podcast promoted on Reddit. I believe you were the one who had shared it on there, and I think you had promoted the um, Groovin' Pods to everybody.
Those are some of still probably the most informational podcasts. Groom was a really great guy.
Yeah,
Persistent as hell. Love that guy, but miss him. He was someone that always helped me. I think a lot of people have come on here and said they have no business being on here. They don't feel like experts, and I'm in the same boat. But I'm obviously doing something right a couple times a year, and I owe a lot of doing less wrong things to Grooven and a lot of the information that he gave. So, and there are other people on the podcast. I think the Burn podcasts were great. When people ask me for betting advice, I remember it was one of the football ones. He said, best advice is just don't bet.
Yeah.
He's like, or just expect to lose because, if you're betting into NFL markets, people are a lot smarter than you. So
yep.
I'm glad you're getting this back up and running. There's a lot of terrible gambling content out there. And I think a lot of us are happy just making fun of the bad content. But it's cool that you've taken the initiative to kind of remedy that and find some space. Although I don't know how much of a remedy my content will be, but we'll see. There'll be some good in here.
Yeah,
hopefully.
for sure. So before we get into an introduction of you, for everyone who might be listening for the first time, I'm going to try to promote this a little bit differently than I used to. Now that with everything going on, everybody working from home, I'm trying to appeal to some different people. So half the podcast, maybe not half, but maybe like 60 or 70% will be sports and gambling, and then other 30% will be just us talking about random stuff. And I'm hoping to draw some new people. So just to let people know. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. So as I normally do with our first time guests, please feel free to introduce yourself from a betting perspective, some memorable betting moments, what got you into betting, things of that nature. So feel free to take it away.
Yeah. I work in, I have a stats and computer science background. I work in finance, doing some analytics and business intelligence work. So basketball statistics, especially, but sports statistics in general kind of always appealed to me. I grew up in the generation that loves to argue online. So kind of where this started is I would get, when I got into UNC. I was a huge hockey guy growing up. Got into UNC, started following basketball a little closer. It's a big sport there. I don't know if anyone knows that. And you might not if you follow me on Twitter. And I just couldn't get enough of kind of the recruiting, projecting how those players would be when they came to UNC, and then following the UNC guys into the pros. So, and nothing was more frustrating than being wrong and about those guys. And to me, gambling was the easiest way to, the cliche, put your money where your mouth is. And so I remember being all in on that 11 and 12 Duke team with Austin Rivers. And this is when I'm at school at UNC. I'm a senior at UNC. I convinced all my roommates to chip in some money. I opened an account at topbet.eu, which has managed to send me mailers and advertisements to this day. They're almost at like 8 years. They're better than the government at finding my location. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I still don't know how BetUS knows where I live, because I haven't made a bet with them in like 11 or 12 years.
Their marketing department is the NSA, as far as I'm concerned. It's unbelievable. I get phone calls from them still, and like I used to hang up mad. Now I just like talk to them. I'm like, how do you guys what's happening?
I'm
So
actually kind of amazed,
Yeah, right. Like, how's Costa Rica? What's going on this time of year? I talked to everybody, and I just pulled out the box score. I don't remember exactly what the spread was. I think it was like Duke -7, something like that, against Virginia Tech, probably more at home. And I'm like, Duke's gonna smash them. Convince all my buddies to go in, and I take my bartender money, and Duke goes into overtime and doesn't cover, but wins. So worst possible scenario for me. Rooted for Duke all game. They won. I still lost. All my buddies told me I was an idiot. And like, I can still remember that loss and how mad I was about losing that money. And going from there, I was like, I want to learn how to not lose money, which, fast forward 3 years, I was still dumping, $200 in Bovada and losing that, in a couple of weeks on NBA. I didn't really understand the market. I think one person, it's a little cliche, but Bob Voulgaris was a big media person around 2012, 2013. It's kind of the first big gambling media person that wasn't a tout, I think, that I remember. And there are probably more, but he was the first one for me. And I really appreciated, he's hiring coders that were working in Python. It was something that I like to talk a lot about APBR metrics forum, which I'll talk a little bit about with one of the questions. It's a huge basketball analytics community. Got really involved there. Started following a lot of these guys on Twitter. You start to make these connections, start to lose a little less, not much less. And then, from there, I'm currently betting and working with people on NBA and WNBA mostly.
Okay.
NBA for me, I looked at some of the other sports. NBA for me, there's 5 guys on the floor at a time. You can get a general idea of the value of each player. When people talk to me about NFL, I don't know how to value a left tackle. I don't know how to value an inside linebacker in, in dime packages, or, that's a level of complexity that is too much for my capabilities. So I stick with basketball because you can generally get an idea of everyone on the floor at the same time, which is nice.
Sure.
And a lot of information was already out there publicly. Ken Palm was doing a lot of stuff with analytics, APBR. They were just coming out with a lot of RAPM, assisted plus bridge adjusted plus minus, stuff like that. ESPN released RPM, like all these predictive metrics were out there. So I just started messing with those and learning how to build them on my own. And that kind of spiraled into coding with some people that are, pretty good at this, do it for a living. And I was lucky to kind of have that backstop to, for sanity, have people that have been successful at it help me out a little bit. And so now I'm kind of continuing that. Gambling is paranoia. You're just always concerned that your edge is gone. You hit 2 weeks where you're like, I'm never going to win another season again. I'm never going to I don't have an edge anymore. So it's constant reassessment. There's a lot of minutia every day, getting into minutes, injuries. NBA injuries are nonstop. They're resting players. I think I had like a personal vendetta against Derrick Rose and Anthony Davis last year based off of how often they would just get ruled out.
Now is Derrick Rose, yeah. was he influential enough on the line, I guess, to affect your bets?
Derrick Rose, and I've talked about this a little bit in some of the NBA stuff, but
okay.
A lot of it, and a lot of it is less so, the general idea is it's less so just him and also who's getting his minutes.
Okay. That makes sense.
Value is just as important as the guy that's missing. And buddy Zach asked a great question about, how much are some of these star players worth? And I'll talk about that then. But yeah, I mean, him getting ruled out last second, and I think it was like Ish Smith maybe was getting his minutes, or, okay. There's especially backup point guards where they control a lot of the pace, a lot of the offense, have the ball in their hands. That's if you're betting totals, that's tricky. with him getting ruled out last second. So
Okay.
I wanted to kill him a few times last year just because it was such a rough late scratch, or he was available and then got 0 minutes. But those are the type of things that I'm doing day in, day out now. It's a lot of minutes and reading headlines, trying to figure out what coaches are thinking, what players are thinking, and just keep hoping that I still have an edge day to day.
Okay. All right. So before we get into the specifics of your NBA and WNBA, first of all, cheers. Um,
What are you drinking?
I got a Coors Original from
Nice.
my parents. My mom thought it was Coors Light when she bought it, and then once it wasn't Coors Light, she's like, "You could have it." I'm like, "All right."
Yeah, a little Coors Banquet. It's something you don't see often.
It's fine.
I got a Sierra Nevada, one of my favorite breweries down here in Asheville, North Carolina. It's a great place to go to. So got one of those tonight.
All right, yeah, and I'm waiting for a second vote. I got a 3-pack of growlers from a local brewery like 15 minutes ago, and I'm waiting for people to vote on whether or not what beer I should drink during the pod. So I'm kind of keeping my eye on the voting there. But so while we wait for that, I had to touch base on your North Carolina roots because I went to U of I. And as you know, our teams faced each other about 15 marches ago. And
wow, that's all.
I'm kind of afraid to ask this because I was in college, but how old were you at that time?
I was 15.
Okay.
So yeah, okay. I'm almost 30. I'm turning 30 this year.
For some reason I was expecting you to be younger. You look a lot. I don't know if it was your profile picture, but you look a lot younger.
Yeah, I usually hide my face a little bit in that with the dog, mostly to trap people into thinking that I don't have terrible tweets because I have the dog, but also some general ambiguity into my name and appearance on there.
Sure.
Although I'm doing a full-face podcast right now. But.
Sure. So going back to that, obviously I wasn't very happy about that, but it was still one of my top memories ever of my college time there. And Illinois doesn't get those kind of moments that UNC does. UNC has this happen about every 5 or so years, it feels like, at least making the title game. So take me back to your favorite memories of UNC, maybe that particular game in general, what you remember about it, because everyone from U of I always just says "fuck Sean May." That's all we say from that game. I remember
he's gigantic, man. He's like the prototypical big, good college center in that he stayed all 4 years, and like the difference between the 22-year-old guy and an 18-year-old guy in terms of like strength and balance is massive for a lot of these. Maybe less so now with some of the training, but I mean back then he was just some of the rebounds he was getting were insane, and those are his putbacks, him using the rim, staying under the rim a lot. He reminded me a little bit of a kid we had a couple years ago named Kennedy Meeks, who won a championship as well. Just kind of had really good timing on the offensive glass, and that's huge for Roy Williams' offense. The thing that I remember the most from that team is for sure, that highlight that I see all the time, it's definitely Ray Felton's 3 right after I think maybe it was Nance Kellogg said Deron Williams was the shutdown man. I don't know if you remember that highlight, but he's like Ray Felton. I won't send it to you. I'm not that mean.
You can if you want me to punch a hole in my basement.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I did have a similar situation. I went down to the Final Four 2016 down in Houston, and I had Chris Jenkins hit a shot directly into my eyeball, which was that was probably the most surreal sports moment I'll ever be a part of live. Hopefully it doesn't get lower than that. But I swear, I always tell people it's like they were shooting off confetti before it even left his hand. Like everyone in the building knew that was good. Jay Wright, hell of inbounds play. Isaiah Hicks was just a step too far behind the line. And then because that happened, I talked myself out of going to the Final Four the next year in Arizona. So I was like, no shot, I'm going down there. We got stuck down in Houston. We had to drive back from Houston. I'm in Charlotte.
Yeah.
13 hours, I think. Don't recommend that after a weekend in Houston. And so, yeah, it was bad. And then we talked ourselves out of Phoenix, and of course we win it. So I've had a couple go the other way too, so that can help with your pain a little bit. But yeah, I remember that. And then when I was in school, it was 08 to 2012. There was a guy that would come out and play with us named KJHOGO, who's a walk-on on the 2005 team. Which is cool. He was out there playing pickup, just dunking on everybody, just insane vertical. And he told us that actually the best person on that team was Rayshon Terry, which always cracks me up. But he said he couldn't get a single minute because he didn't know any of the plays. And he's like, that's the secret from that 2005 team. No one knows. Like he used to give buckets to Felton, everyone in practice, and then. I always laugh. The last memory from that 2005 team, a couple of my close friends were walk-ons when I was in school, and they have a tradition where a lot of the old players come back and play, and they were walk-ons for that 2011-2012 season with Kendall Marshall, Harrison Barnes, some good players. And they said Ray Felton came back and just busted everybody's ass. And they were so used to seeing on Twitter that he was fat or a joke. And he's like, I'll never think that to him that ended the conversation about could Kentucky beat the Cavaliers. He's like, there's no comparison. Once you get NBA training, NBA coaching, and you're 27, he's like, those guys could come off the bench and give the Naismith Player of the Year buckets. He's like, I've never seen anything like Kendall couldn't even dribble so that's Ray Felton. I'll always stand up for it because he gets a lot of slander on the internet. But that 2005 team is just a little bit before my time, but I loved watching him play in the pros.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you for enjoying him. I mean, he's from your alma mater, and you gotta support him. But
yeah, I mean, it was him. He was number 5, and then Ty Lawson was number 5. So it was like a group of point guards that we all supported. Darren Williams, I always was, I started watching pro a little bit more than I was watching Big Ten. I still don't watch a ton of college basketball live anymore. And I always was impressed at, the conversation that people were having with him and Chris Paul. And then I actually got to watch Chris Paul 2 weeks ago, one of the last games live. And that's not close anymore. Chris Paul is still so good, but Darren Williams was one of those first athletic kind of do-it-all point guards where it wasn't one or the other, where he was a real good athlete but couldn't pass or vice versa. So love playing with him in video games, and that was my connection to that Illinois team. But just a bit before my time, but at least you guys have that one to hold on to.
It was fun, and when you go to certain schools, that your window is very small, so you want to take advantage of it. I kind of figured that was it for Illinois, and there's probably some people that think it's that way for Dayton this year. I'm going to have some people on the podcast next week to discuss Dayton, and I'm looking forward to the tears and beers with that one. But
that's a real tough. Yeah,
that's gotta be. I actually have a thing on the pod for next week. What is worse, to not be able to play the tournament or to lose in the second round of the tournament? What would be worse? Not knowing.
And I always joke with people as as a Pats fan, I always tell all my buddies that are Jets fans that they have it easy because they don't have any brutal losses in the Super Bowl, and then they tell me some things that are pretty graphic, and then it's which is fair. So I don't know. I mean, not playing at all, especially with the nature of college basketball, with recruiting and timing and injuries. Even when you have a great team, with how easy it is for some of these kids to get injured because they're still growing.
Yeah.
If I were a Dayton fan, I would be miserable right now.
Yeah.
I probably would have been miserable already, but I really would be. That's a tough one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get on to the to the NBA, WNBA betting. So
Sure.
this is kind of your bread and butter here, and I'd like you to discuss your approach to betting, without obviously giving away your tips and tricks, or your bread, giving away
Yeah.
your tips, but you had mentioned in our chat, the betting market and the daily battle. So care to uh, expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing for me because I individually, my entire time betting, never moved the screen. So if you're kind of betting, I didn't move any lines with my bets. So I was not necessarily cognizant of bet timing, market entry, understanding openers, how much you get down, that type of stuff. That's like the level of sophistication to kind of get to someone who's maybe doing it full time. So, people I work with that are doing full time, not going to be betting, bet online, overnights, usually are pretty mad. Oh, which one do we go with?
Oh, well, nobody's picked the third beer yet, so I'm actually going back into my
Of
randoms
course.
here.
Okay.
No, it's another random one. So I should note that I have aunt and uncle or my wife's aunt and uncle own a bar in Western
Awesome.
Illinois, and they give me
Some loose ones.
they give me beers that they can't sell anymore because they're expired. But there's no expiration beer to me, so this one's a Victory Summer Love Ale, so it's just a random one. I think it's expired enjoyed by September 25th, 2018. So
Yeah, that just makes it stronger.
that's
To be
fine.
honest with you, just a little more fermentation. Yeah. So keep me on that third one, but yeah, I think, and I was mentioned it. That was probably the craziest thing to me is that, it's an 11-game slate for NBA on like a Wednesday, and I run stuff the night before, look through some major injuries, run stuff in the morning. Person I work with, will do their stuff, and so then you're looking at the screen and you're like, all right, we have an edge here. And, as you're going to kind of get everything down, and there are different ways to do that. Some people have bots, some people, all different ways to do that, right? And, someone else bets it the other way. And it's like, hold on. Who do we think that was? Why would that be? Is there an injury? Like you have to, like anytime someone's moving a line a significant amount, once they've opened up the limits a little bit, and Pinnacle and Bookmaker are on, around 11, even earlier, probably like 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. You'll see a lot of movement across those lines. That's kind of the zone where people are kind of hedging what injuries they know, what they don't know. We're trying to figure out what information we may be missing, or that's already priced in. A lot of times there are players like Danilo Gallinari, Russell Westbrook, Kawhi that are resting on back-to-backs, but occasionally they don't.
Yeah.
And you have to look for coach quotes saying, okay, we have a full roster today, something like that, or he's leaning towards playing because his quad is feeling better for Kawhi, something like that.
Sure.
And it's a little bit of a scramble and a battle. And then, I still work a day job, so I'm at my desk, and I actually bought an Apple Watch for this reason. Get injury updates, line moves, stuff like that on my watch, and like I'm leaving, like putting calls on mute to make sure that like that 9 to 11 window, I have like full attention on that. So it was something I didn't notice when I started betting, and I was, I would leave work and just fire into 5 p.m. basketball lines. And at that point, if you're firing into basketball lines after 5 p.m. that there has been a significant injury or anything, so it may not be the best idea. It's similar to betting NFL on a Sunday. Not quite as mature of a market because you have more time, but those later lines are are definitely not what we want to get into, and that's not where we're on our entry point. And it's the same for, other people that are big in this market. So I would say if you ever, if you're starting to get into it, just, open up Betting Talk or SBR Odds or whatever, one of those live odd screens for free, and look at the screen between like 9 and 11 and stuff just lights up, which I love that kind of excitement, that thrill. I work in finance. I don't get that often. I work in a big company, so it's just kind of boring stuff. So I love that. That's been kind of the biggest transition to start betting more seriously for basketball. It even happens in WNBA too. There are only a couple different timings we see in WNBA that things are changing, but it's usually around the same time frame. And there's less media coverage of WNBA, so there's a lot more unknowns in terms of injuries and things like that. So that window in the morning, I call it the morning mayhem when I sent it to you. It's that's a lot of fun. That's kind of what I get excited for. And then you just black out, bet the entire board, and then you go, you look at 6 p.m. after I leave work, and I'm like, all right, what did we bet? And like, are there any injuries coming in? Like, did we screw anything up? And deal with it then. But it's like that scene in Old School where he does the debate, and I'm like sweating at my desk. I'm like, all right, we're good. Those big slates. So it's a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed that piece of it. Working with the people that I work with that are just way smarter than me. And when you're that smart, you tend to have a dry sense of humor, or like are pretty tough. And so if you miss something, or like, I'm like, oh, we should be hammering like a Clippers over, and they're like, you obviously didn't see Kawhi is in, or something like that, and you get roasted. It's pretty tough. But that's been going from, kind of more individual thing. I'll talk about this a little bit. I think betting, there's more networking and teamwork options available than people give credit to. And some of the guys we talked about earlier in that Seville group, and they look, they're a pretty tough crowd on outsiders for good reason. They win, they bet, but they've been all working together for a significant amount of time, and that kind of normalizes the process for you, gives you something concrete to hold on to and come back to, when you're having a tough stretch and stuff like that. So it's been fun. That's been the last probably 13, 14 months for me. I've been doing a little more seriously in a group, and I think if you just do it solo and you're trying to win and grind it out, that's a tough headspace to be in when things go bad. I don't know how people do it.
Yeah, when I had my podcast, what was like 4 years ago, when it was Not That Tricky and Muck Nuts and Birch, they it opened my eyes. Like, I don't mind. I never mind being the dumbest guy in a room, because I'm able to soak up, so much, or at least I try to. I've never been able to be a good sports bettor, even though I have had this many podcasts, but it doesn't bother me too much. But I'm just amazed at like the networking involved, and like the just like the amounts bet, and it's just like, for me, like, if you're going to be betting serious money, you might as well try to know as much as you can about it. And for me, I'm not betting that much, so I don't really think of it as anything but a hobby. So but
and I love doing that too. Like I have like accounts specifically dedicated towards my hobby bets. One thing I love to do Sunday morning, just dumbest NFL teasers I can get, for pizza money. And, I'll do it with a group of buddies, and we'll just all throw in a couple bucks at the beginning of the season. And if we win, we just roll it over. And, that's fun for me. That's a fun way to watch NFL Sunday without actually betting NFL, because that is a disaster. I don't know. I have no idea how people do that. But yeah, one of the networking, it's not even really network, but one of the things like I never thought of, if you're someone who's winning bets and you're betting into, let's say, a PPH and, local, and they notice you're winning, sometimes they'll cut you off. Sometimes they'll just start betting your stuff. And those people could have bigger people behind them that are betting their stuff bigger. And, they'll refer to those as leaks. And so when you start betting and when your people are trying to get large sums down, and you see the screen start moving before, you've gotten everything down, there's like that paranoia comes in, and it's like detective work. All right, we got to put a fake into this account. This is new.
Yeah.
Like, who's seeing it? So that's the stuff. Like, the quant work for NBA is a blast, and the NBA analytics community is really cool. But kind of like the sleuthing out, the market knowledge, where you're putting your money down, not getting stiffed, talking to people about getting more out, like that stuff is important. And, as I started working with people, the one thing I always said, as you mentioned, I don't have a problem being the dumbest person in the room either. And I actually would rather be in like listen to smart people, but I'll always try and add some sort of value when I can. And if you're starting out and working with people, whether you're bearding accounts for them at rec books or, facilitating injury news or things like that, always on top of trade rumors and coaching firings and stuff, like there's value you can add that isn't just having the best model in the world. If you pay attention and you're ahead of the curve and you have some books that are slow to update injuries, you're not going to make any friends, but like Kyrie gets ruled out, you can go ahead and start hitting unders or something,
Yeah.
Those are ways to start adding a little bit of value, and then you can learn more about the other process. So that's really how I kind of got involved, just incremental value, and then having a coding background helps too.
Yeah, and people have mentioned the whole getting cut off thing, and I imagine like the art of being able to find books that will take your action once you become really good is almost as much of a skill, or is just as important as being good at betting.
Yeah, it really is. And, I have some of these notes in like my intro to betting thing. Like, one thing that really facilitated this for a lot of people to be able to get into offshore accounts, like a lot of people can VPN, do all that stuff, but Bitcoin has really opened up the offshore market for people in the US a little bit more. That 2017 or 2016 Jenkins shot, I was betting Bitcoin back then, and I look back, Bitcoin spiked a couple years back. I look back, and it was like a $200 bet when I bet it, and it was like 10 grand a couple of years ago. And I was like, this is somehow worse later than it is now, but that one really stung actually. I was betting full Bitcoin on game. I have some ones with some tweets of the number runner who's on gambling Twitter. I don't know if you know him, but
Yeah.
when we were like, I don't know if it'll get past $50, for a Bitcoin. I don't know. We'll see. And this is so dumb. It gets I think it was like peaked at 19K. I'm like, well, needless to say, I didn't make fortunes in the Bitcoin trading industry. So still trying to bet. But that has opened up the offshore thing. So like Bookmaker, Pinnacle, that type of stuff is a little more accessible. There are some big outs, but yeah, getting down quietly is a big thing that people are concerned about. Like being able to get down more money without moving the line is pretty important. And then coordinating, like I'm not involved in any of this, but like for the people that I work with that are betting big money, they have to coordinate all that. Like, it has to all be done at the same time. There are people like that are doing bots and things like that. That's not really an issue for me, but that's things that you got to think about when you're scaling up that you never think about when you're just hammering, $100 on NCAA tournament games.
Sure. Okay. So let's go into. I guess this is kind of really hypothetical because we know that they're not going to play now. I mean, let's just be honest. But you had brought up, and I'm sorry, that's not going to happen.
No.
I just don't see it happening. But let's just say if they played, you had mentioned in our chat that I don't know if you mentioning this in the chat meant that you were thinking of how you were going to model it or what, but
Yeah, we were. This came up. The no fans, right?
yeah, the no fans, the you were mentioning the home court advantage with no crowds, the playoff home court advantage, whether there be any, and then just betting playoff series in general. So, like,
Yeah, I like
what were
betting
you?
playoffs.
Yeah, so like, if let's just say in this bizarre world where this clears over and we know it's not going to, but if it did, and you were modeling playoff basketball with no crowds, like how were you going to go about doing that?
Yeah, so the nice part, and I mentioned this a little bit, is the NBA basketball analytics community is intense. It's full of people that are really earnestly good and smart people that are testing all these things and theories out and questions out. And for me, selfishly, the nice part is that there's such earnestly good people. They don't like to gamble, very risk adverse. So
Yeah,
I like to, follow along with the research. We have there's like an NBA Slack channel, people that work in front offices and stuff that are great. They have nothing to do with gambling, but they've looked into, one thing that people have looked into, and the NBA has done it on their own is rest and travel with regards to home court advantage. And if you look at like the average margin of victory from away teams 10 years ago, I think, the standard they say in NFL is 3 points, right, for home field advantage.
yeah,
And
roughly.
yeah, NBA, they would have said 3 points, a decade ago. But NBA has spent millions and has whole teams of people working to adjust their schedule to optimize travel, to optimize how much practice people get, how much rest. So you can actually see over the years that home court advantage has decreased significantly from the physical aspect. So rest is getting better. You're almost better just modeling off raw rest than you are trying to look too much in home court advantage. There are two exceptions to that. Utah and Denver are playing at altitude. Huge difference. Huge, not game to game, but over the course of the season, it actually makes a big difference. If you're playing a back-to-back and the second game's Denver, unless you're significantly better than them now, which is not many teams, that's a schedule loss for pretty much anybody.
Yeah, and I don't I think this might have started in like a covers thread or something.
Yeah.
There, and I don't remember the name of what it's called, but like when a team has to play like back to backs, Utah and Denver, it was like
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
ridiculous. It was
Orlando
like
had that earlier this year, and against, and their second game was against Utah, and Utah's had a weird season, but they went down relatively big in the first half, and I was just looking at it. I don't do a ton of live betting; it's hard to get down, but just started hitting some Utah live because I was like, no shot Orlando can keep this going for the entirety, going back to back.
yeah.
I haven't seen the phrase for it, but I'm sure someone coined something.
Yeah, there was a phrase for it. And I remember in the Bulls 72-10 season that one of their losses was to Denver. I don't remember if it was like one of those back to back situations, but your body can't handle that altitude like on if it's not used to it.
Yeah, I was right. I mean, none of us are professional athletes, but if you go play a game of basketball, just generally, even if you're in good shape, you're pretty sore the next
Yeah,
day.
yeah,
And it's no joke. And then you got to play again with lower oxygen count. I don't know, man. That sounds terrible to me. And NBA has taken that into account. So you see actually much fewer of those situations. Celtics, I'm a big Celtics fan, had a second game back-to-back against Utah in Utah. Won it. And it's a huge deal. That's a
yeah.
schedule loss for a lot of teams. And that's where you can kind of start to pick out teams that win those games during the regular season. You can start adding some of their win percentage into your modeling because it can cover some things that maybe your model or just like margin of victory may miss. But yeah, the not having a crowd, the biggest influence based off a lot of the work that's been done and if I did want to say coming out of this, if someone has better information, and wants to yell at me and tell me I'm wrong, I'll absolutely defer to that.
Sure.
I'm just going based off of what I know at this point, and that's it does have an impact on officiating. So pressure to make the calls, all the narratives that have to do with officiating. I've seen some jokes recently about how many fewer chargers there would be if they couldn't do the really cool charge call. Right? Like, hyped up, TV Ted is fired up. He's ready to throw the charge call. And
it's just like a home plate. It's just like a home plate umpire doing his strikeout call,
Honestly, some of these guys get into it. They have a crow hop. They're throwing out their shoulder. Like they're getting Tommy John because they're throwing charge.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
They have to be practicing that in their hotel rooms, like the night of.
Yeah,
the day of the game,
I get the vanity. Like that's your time to shine.
Yeah.
Everyone and the best is with the crow hop, they can also audible into the block, kind of just last second, pump fake.
Yeah.
And the drama's there. That's great, but it's probably not great for the call and how they feel about it. So there's some innate pressure from the fans and stuff. So we were starting to look into foul related things with regards to modeling and impact. So there's a lot of good information, and if anyone wants to reach out to me, my Twitter's at KJHOGO, HOGO, and I can help you out with some of the resources that are out there that people developed. And there's a site, PBB Stats, that's fantastic and free, and they do a lot of work about what's teams' efficiencies are in the bonus. When they're in the foul penalty, getting into that faster makes a significant difference for offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency. So, that those foul calls may not all be shooting fouls, but if you have more time in the bonus, more likely to have a better offensive showing, things like that. So we're starting to dig into that, and then which sucked. It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
So I'm not mad. I was joking, and we'll talk about the coronavirus later, but
sure.
I was not mad to stop working on that for a little bit. As long as the longer I don't have to do that hypothetical, the better. Just more work, so it's fine. But the ref information is, and I know some people like to track what refs make what calls and things like that, and it's helpful for them. I don't necessarily do that, but something we might have wanted to look into because the refs without the crowd are the biggest wild card.
Yeah. So I was going to say, well, the thing is, you still might have the opportunity to bet on empty stadiums. It just might not be till next year, So
yeah, I got some time. I can shelve that.
So
code.
at least you have the the base for it. Sounds like.
Right, and they played some. We were looking into. They played some European games without fans, and we were looking into percentage differential from normal home court advantage based off of the markets. And we don't know if that's right, but you can usually defer to the betting markets on this stuff because someone with a lot of money thinks it's right, and they have a lot of money for a reason. So there was a difference in the soccer games, European soccer games that have crowds. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head, but we were going to start pricing it in at that baseline and kind of adjust from there.
Okay. Yeah. So I was going to mention that I bet on Australian basketball.
The NBL. Yeah, it was the finals.
Yeah, I bet on Perth +5.
How'd that go?
On Saturday night. It won. They recovered the whole way, and as a tout would like to say, an outright winner, even though I only bet on the +5. So
yeah,
I know touts like to say that when they bet the plus. And they outright winner. Well, you still, but But anyways,
I like to make sure people know that I was so smart to bet the underdog, but not smart enough to bet the money line. That's my whole point when I tell people that. I'm like, oh, easy outright winner. It's like doesn't make any difference. It's like
But there was a couple players I recognized. Andrew Bogut was on the other team, and Mason Plumlee was on the Perth team. So
that family, man, there have been so many Plumlees. I had a buddy that played for Duke that I grew up with, and was lucky enough to get tickets when I was in school at UNC. And Duke Stadium is a high school stadium, and Perky Plumlee, the dad, sat behind me, and he's like 7'2". And so it was like the high school gym. And so his knees are just like up at my head, and it was the worst seating experience I've ever. It was cool to go into Cameron Indoor and stuff, but I'll always hold that against the Plumlees for that awkward seating arrangement and for everything else while they were at Duke, but that in particular.
Sure. Understood. All right. Well, let's get into the last part before we get into the betting questions. There was the topic of the whole Sports Cheetah WNBA contest. So, everyone loves a good, nut flex, whatever you want to call it.
Pissing match.
Wanting to
pissing
contest.
Yeah, pissing contest.
So feel free to share how that got started, how it played out, and then share your thoughts on I kind of know the answer of the Duke contest, that proves everything, but maybe you'll have a surprising answer to that I'm not expecting.
Probably not, but no. So Cheetah Preston is on ESPN. He's pretty well known in the gambling community. Just super genuine, nice guy, always there to help out. He has a Twitter following, and he's in all of the markets. He does college football. He bets everything. I don't know how he does it. And I know he's a big basketball guy, loves basketball. We weren't super close. We have some mutual friends. And I'm just a random person on Twitter that he has no idea who I am. And I was frustrated about something to the start to WNBA season. And I saw him tweet about buying off a live total in the middle of a WNBA game and saying that that's just betting the WNBA. And as much work as I had been putting into WNBA with mixed results, at that point, I was not thrilled to see someone say that, you're just fired. And the thing is he has an audience. He's got to make betting fun. I'm sure I'm never going to listen to this podcast because I can't deal with secondhand embarrassment firsthand of listening to myself, but I'm sure.
I don't even listen to my own podcast.
I listen to all. I actually listen to your podcast. I just won't listen to myself, so everyone can tell me what it says. But I probably don't have the entertainer streak that he does, and people want to hear about the Gen stuff. But it would take me a minute to get $500 down on live WNBA, right? Probably. It might take multiple accounts to do that. So I was like, that's not what you do. And so I said something snarky to him. And there was a weird conversation a while back about who's better, Joe Harris or Klay Thompson. I don't even know how we get down that rabbit hole, but I told him that Klay probably has a bigger edge in WNBA than he does, which he did not appreciate. He said that he would go head-to-head against me. I was like, I don't even know what that means. I don't want to do that. It sounds like a lot of work. I'm going to be honest. I'm just going to bet. Betting is instantaneous verification of your knowledge, right? Either you win or you don't. You either lose your money or you make money. And going against other people has always been, to me, just kind of in the market. But I kind of got, talked into it from some of our mutual friends, hyped it up. It's the summer. WNBA doesn't have as many games. And it's a great sport to bet and watch in the summer. League pass is $17. They have games on at noon, which are hysterical. They have these camp games where it's all kids. And so it's the most absurd crowd noise. It's awesome. I love watching WNBA in the summer as something that's Summer League and WNBA are a blast. And I was like, you know what? Fine. $5,000. We'll pick a side or a total for every game for the rest of the season. There was 130 games left. And I didn't, I figured he was thinking I would want to do $100. It was just a random Twitter account. But I was like, all right, if we're going to do it, if I'm going to pick 130 games, I'm not going to do it for something that's not a good amount of money. So $5,000. Sure. And then, you had someone on your show, Kunk, who is just an awesome human being. He's, has a son, Dylan, who is hysterical, just a great kid. And
Yeah.
he does a lot of great work for Jackson Laboratory. I have a family member with dementia who I'm really close with, and they do a lot of work for that as well. And so, like, listen, if I ship it, I'll donate $1,000 to that. This is so dumb. I can't believe I'm doing this. And like I said, I kind of got bullied. Well, then Joey Kanish, who is I'm not going to give him.
Instigator.
Yeah, he's an instigator. I'm not going to give him any positive press. He reads his own press clippings, but he's a funny guy, and he hyped it up and started booking side bets. And some people I work with were like, well, I want action on this too. And we're trying to bet thousands with him on side action. And he was like, well, he's like, I was thinking like $50, And so he messaged me that they have like 10K in side handle and like all this stuff. And I was like, this is a lot. I'm going to be honest. And I'm not like, Preston's a celebrity. I mean, he's the betting media person. I'm just an idiot with a dog on Twitter. And I was like, man, this is going to be wild. So, we're pretty confident in our WNBA numbers. Talk a little bit. I know one of the questions is what's the difference. I'm really happy with some of the adjustments we've made in WNBA last 2 seasons. Really great sport. So, first couple weeks, we just do unit sizes. Everything's 1 unit. I rack up about like a 12-unit lead. And it was great. We were doing pinnacle lines at 3 p.m. We had to pick it every time. And which still, that sucks. Every day in the summer. It was a real pain in the ass. And, I was like at my sister's wedding trying to get in these picks. And we come down the stretch, and like I said, I'm up about 12 units. And then out of nowhere, Cheetah just rips off like 17-3 run, maybe 18 and forward. Like it just, and I'm not doing I'm still like, I dumped a little bit, but I'm like still at 51% that stretch, but he was hitting it like 80%.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden the lead's gone, and I'm just getting chirped in every group chat, every DM, like people who have bet on me are like, you're a loser. And like, I still got to bet the sport. So like, I'm already like trying to figure that part out, and I'm submitting these picks, and the group that I'm working with, like they're not going to wait to move lines for this contest. So I'm betting into edges that are already gone or like have already moved and stuff. So towards the end, I was really annoyed. I actually like probably sent like pretty mean DM to Cheetah. Like I was like, I just want this to be over. Like this is just so much work. And like he's a really nice guy. He's like, sorry, like doesn't need to be that big deal. Cheetah's also really good at the contest aspect of it. So he was following what I was picking. And like with basketball edges, sometimes like the market doesn't correct the next game. And we're going to show an edge for 2 or 3 games, depending on what it is, or injury news or something. So he was starting to pick up what I was doing based off of some of these things. And he was going oppo to make up units. And I, on the other hand, didn't even know if he was submitting picks or not. Like he could have just been making, like I wasn't paying attention. I was literally just getting my picks in, and I'm done. I don't want to put any more effort into this. I'm just like naturally a lazy person. And he played it awesome. The only issue is like it came down to the last day, and he was selling a couple points. So we didn't push, and he would win. And I think we ended up with the same win-loss record, and I won by like, 1.5 units. And it was great because I got to donate everything, and Cheetah, upstanding guy, sent her away. And, my friends were all like, giving me shit for it being that close, blowing, almost choking the lead, like getting all those like choke gifts in the chat and stuff. But I got to the end of it, and I was like, I'm never doing this again. It didn't do anything. Like once he caught up to me towards the end, we were talking, it's a coin flip, man. Like towards the end of the season in these sports, the edges already razor thin. We're betting probably a third of what we were betting in the first one, in terms of like our actual bet volume. And the edges were just great. I'm coin flipping down the stretch, and I was like, this doesn't really tell us anything. I learned nothing here. Like I don't feel like I won anything, except for I got to donate the money and stuff. And it was more just like Cheetah and I battled it out and talked trash. Other people got to bet on it. Then it was fun. The actual mental part was more tedious for me than I wouldn't do it again. I did like a joke one with two buddies in the NFL picking every game. That was funny because like I don't know what I'm talking about with NFL. So that was fun. But like, when I'm actually betting it every day, it's the last thing I want is more mental exposure to this on top of it.
So I'm guessing since you were betting into like stale lines that you didn't actually bet a lot of those contest plays, right?
Yeah, so we were betting at 3 p.m. Eastern time, and we had already moved whatever like we had bet for the day usually at that point. So yeah, I would say, we were picking every game down the stretch, and WNBA probably has like 3 games a night on average, 3-4 games a night, and we might have 2 bets maybe. And I'm picking every game. In 3 games, there are nights we didn't have a single bet, and I'm still firing off 3 into Cheetah's contest, hoping that he didn't game theory me and pick the opposite, which he did every time. And I was like, God, this sucks. And every time I would be like, you know what, I'm going to pay attention and see what and I would in one ear out the other. Would totally forget.
Yeah, I've heard about the game theory in the last week of the super contest for NFL, where you like will pick the lines that have moved the most against you, because you know that most people are still going to bet like if the line is now plus 14, you're going to take the plus 10 because you know the other person's probably going to take the minus 10.
And you got to make because everyone's going to take the thing that's furthest off market, and it's how much you trust your own numbers there and being contrarian. And I always joke like there's a difference between being contrarian and wrong. But Cheetah's really good at we'd submit our picks to a buddy, Frank, who's terrible at running the contest. Frank, sorry, bud. Just real bad. Nish will confirm that. Just super nice guy. Does great work. But just we shouldn't have involved him. But he was a mutual friend, so it was easy. And
sure.
And like I said, she didn't know me, so to put up $5,000 against just a random person, I had to have some people like vouch for me. And that was I'm glad I got to do it. I got more people in the community involved. Working with Nish, I think a lot of I've gotten to help some people with betting related questions that they may have on Twitter, or like meet some new people. So that was good. Manual betting contests are a nightmare, and anyone doing anything like that to try and prove a point outside of like just being annoying is probably not someone you want to be working with in general. People I were working with were like, you need to stop doing this. I just don't get any more arguments online. I'm like, no, that's not really my style.
Yeah. Okay. So we have some listener questions here for you. And we're gonna start. I didn't put people's names down on here, so maybe you can remember who asked these questions. But one of your buddies had asked about how much stars
exactly.
Like Greek and LeBron and people like that are worth in your opinion, and does this differ from the market move?
Yeah, so I think those guys are. I like thinking players in tiers in terms of how much they're worth to lines, not necessarily themselves, but their value overall and their impact metrics. So you'll see Giannis, Harden, LeBron, those guys all at the top, maybe Jokic and Embiid, like at the top of these impact metrics, anywhere between like 4 and 6 points, right? 4 and 7 points, whatever it is. The trick with that is when someone gets injured, you're not subtracting their value, you're redistributing their minutes. So if LeBron's missing time, the Lakers bench kind of sucks. Pretty bad. Giannis, they've kind of flattened out their talent curve, and I think a great example of this is last year we were on Toronto a ton when Kawhi sat because we thought some of their players were underrated in terms of like Norman Powell, Fred VanVleet. Kyle Lowry still probably versus like how much he impacts the game and like what people think of him, and Marc Gasol. Kyle Lowry and Marc Gasol are vying for all defensive teams this year, and they were last year. And so when Kawhi went out, the market would overreact according to us.
Yeah.
I can't say that definitively because it's just our estimation. So I do think that there is a tendency to overreact to guys, big names being out if their bench is better than people realize, or their secondary stars. Like Chris Middleton's really good. 50-40-90 season. He's at 30% usage. He's a really difficult shot maker. Is he passing as much as Giannis? No. Does he give you some of the things that Giannis does? Not really, but he flattens out their talent distribution a little more than LeBron to KCP. I don't even know who. I couldn't even tell you who his backup is off the top of my head. Right? Anytime you got to give Rondo and Avery Bradley, and that hurts me to say a Celtics fan. Anytime you got to give those guys more minutes in 2015 or 2020, even 2015, 2020, it's tough. So that question, I don't want to be the guy who's answering a question with another question, or it's not like how much are other people worth, but that's more what you're looking for. Like, what's the drop off? What's the replacement value of the next guy's up? And some teams have better situations than others.
So it's as big of a star might be, it's not always just like how big he is. It's who's the next man up.
Who's the next man up, and you see teams that. And you'll see teams that are really good in the regular season. They'll win, like the Raptors for all those years were awesome in the regular season, before they fired Casey and stuff like that, and tricked me into betting them in the playoffs against LeBron, which I did that every year. And I felt like I was smarter than everyone else. And I know my guy, I don't know if Spoon listens to this, but JT Spoon is a good follow. And he was all in on the Raptors with me. We were moving to an island if they won the Eastern Conference. And they did not. They got destroyed by LeBron. But they had set up a good talent base across the regular season to survive injuries, to survive lower minutes to stars. When you get to the playoffs, term you'll see used is rotation shortening or lineup shortening, and stars. I like to use a proxy of like top 3 players on a team because they're playing about 50% of the minutes. And then you kind of think of the other guys as a unit. So top usage, top minutes guys like, Kawhi and PG in the playoffs are going to be awesome because they're awesome. They can initiate their shot. They can initiate for their teammates, that type of stuff. And so you can kind of bucket them into their group, and I think Bev would probably be their third best player. And then you can bucket the rest of the team into that. But some of these teams like the Raptors, the Celtics are really good. Stevens does a really good job with injuries and replacing value. We lost a lot of Kyrie games, we being the Celtics that I pretend I'm on the team. And we lost a lot of games for his injuries and still won. Like that Philadelphia series a couple years back, there was no Kyrie, but again, you kind of flatten that loss out across guys like Smart, Rozier, Kelly Olynyk was awesome for us. So stuff like that. So I think that's probably going to be the difference between people who are winning a lot of basketball bets and losing them is adequately valuing everyone as opposed to just the stars.
Okay. All right. The next question we have is, like I said, I didn't make a note of who said it, but the difference between NBA and WNBA modeling. Is there much of a difference? I mean, I'm guessing there is, but maybe there isn't.
So similar structure, probably more similar than I expected. And this was a buddy as burner, so I'm not going to out that. But, some people are smart enough to create burners. I was not one of those people, so I'm going down the ship here. Hopefully none of my family or anything sees this.
Oh, by the way, I found out I found out that my mom watches this, or at least she watches part of it. So
Oh, that's cool. See, I like that. Other people's family, fine. I can't have
yeah,
my own family
I don't think
telling me.
she's gonna make it to this point because she was calling Sizzle, Dizzle, Fizzle. She's like,
Yeah,
who,
Sizzle's
who
fake as
who'd you have
hell.
on the podcast? That Fizzle or Dizzle?
I
I'm like,
love Sizzle's fantastic. Sizzle has such a hatred for McIntyre and for Schwimmer. It's unbelievable. He is relentless. He's such a lot of these guys that you've had on here. I've become more friendly with too as I'm learning this stuff. And a guy that suggested me One Big Holiday is awesome. And then there are some guys that are just absolute maniacs like Lou and Norm who I wouldn't ever want to meet them in person.
oh, I met
When
Lou.
I'm not,
Yeah, I met Lou.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
The thing that I've always said about Lou is he's not as fat as I thought he'd be.
it's a real bummer. I kind
Yeah.
of wanted something bad to
But I
happen to
mean, I
him,
guess
but
he was kind of taller, so like, I don't know.
I've
But
actually had relatively earnest conversations with Lou, and I get that like being anonymous online is just carte blanche to do whatever you want. So I get it. I've never been anonymous online. I've always been
yeah,
relatively attached to my thing. So, and I'm still pretty like tough on certain things with regards to politics and stuff like that.
yeah.
So understandable. But so this is my Vice Burner asked WNBA, NBA differences. Jot down a couple. Shorter seasons are trickier. One thing about the NBA is you get into about 30 games, and a lot of teams have played each other. You get really good data. The lines are tighter because the books also have better data, and people betting into the markets have better data. But if you're using multiple seasons, having 82 game seasons is a bigger sample size than the 30 something game season that WNBA has. So that's tricky. So you gotta tinker with the weighting. The other trick with WNBA is there's two other ones that are really significant. They just have players come in from Europe in the middle of the season. Why? Just like you're looking at minutes, and all of a sudden, someone from for the Washington Mystic this year, who are awesome. We were all in on them to win the title from a certain point on. Basically, her name's Emma Meesman, and she came in and was lights out, unbelievable. We do a lot of same player modeling and stuff and weighting, and her numbers just skyrocket, especially offensively. And then they just come out of nowhere though. Like it's just right in the middle of the season. They finish Euros and they're back. And you're like, all right, well, this team, Washington Mystic, were already great. And now they added this player. So you have to try and evaluate how good this is with minimal data from Europe. Other trick is college data available for women's basketball is a little trickier. There's someone out there, I wish I'd gotten their Twitter, a great resource, try and give credit when I can, that does modeling for women's college draft or the WNBA draft,
Okay.
which is helpful for us because it's a really the markets are smaller. I can't watch a ton of it. People aren't doing as much draft analysis for WNBA. So that, weighting those European players and the rookies coming in is tricky. You got to kind of have a general idea of what type of player they are when they come in. And if you're just, taking a stab in the dark, you can miss. Luckily, we knew Meesman was really good. And then the last thing for WNBA difference is coaching is just abysmal in the WNBA. It's so bad right now. Derek Fisher is one of the worst coaches in anything that I've seen. Yeah, it's real bad. Like he benched, was Parker in the middle of a playoff series. He has no idea who his best players are. Coach from Connecticut stuck with the Stars too long. I'm a Connecticut Sun fan, and I was just going nuts. They lost. I think their net rating in the second quarter of the season was like -8 per 100 possessions, which is ridiculous because their overall net rating for the season was like +6. So he just was screwing up his rotations to that point. And then Bill Laimbeer, who Bill Laimbeer is, right?
Sure.
Like he's obviously one of the people that's going to say, not big into what you would call the analytics, right? Revolution that people love to hang their hat on. No one on his team is shooting threes. Like Kel Sword, maybe Plum, but like he has Cam Page and Asia Wilson, who are bigs. Something that is of significant value in the WNBA now, as players have gotten better, is primary initiators, which is a term I stole from some smart draft people that have the ball to start the possession, who create passes and shots for their team, are getting taller. So like if you look at Elena Delle Donne, you look at Brianna Stewart, Jonquel Jones a little bit. These are 6'10", they're not like 6'6", and much taller. So it's like Kevin Durant, who's able to have the ball in his hand and create these shots and mismatches. And, if you watched Elena Delle Donne last year, she looked like dirt. She's like throwing her shoulder into people, getting to her spots, hitting step backs, like that type of impact and creation makes a huge difference. So you try and capture the skill difference adequately in WNBA, where it might be a little bit wider of a range than the NBA.
Okay, now with WNBA, you were mentioning that you were talking about at least Lambeer not embracing analytics, and if you watch if you look at like the most common shots taken like now versus like 20 years ago, they show you like how everything's like mostly on the perimeter or in the paint. How is it with the WNBA? Is it getting more to that way?
Some teams, but not really. Lambeer's 3-point attempt rate, which is like the percentage of their field goals that are threes, is just like it won't tick up at all. Like Cam Page, and that's where I was going with that. Cam Page and Asia can shoot threes, and they were shooting them in like the All-Star game and all that stuff, and he just doesn't. He tries to bully ball, which there is some advantage to because of the size differences in women's basketball right now, where that's beneficial. But he is 100% not buying into that. Derek Fisher, 100% not buying into that. There is something to be said about right now. It's probably a little more of a skill that is not as prevalent in the WNBA in terms of shooting threes off the dribble. A lot of their threes are catch and shoot to kind of square it up. Being 6'10", shooting dribble pull-up threes, it's a lot easier, right? Just size-wise, the physical aspect. So, I think some of the especially the point guards, some of the athletes that are 5'7"-ish or 5'8" are more comfortable getting to the mid-range and taking those. And I don't know how that transitions out, but no, teams could really benefit from optimizing their shot profile. And I know that they did that with the Mystic last year. They had Meesman space out. Ariel Atkins I'm a big fan of her game. She's awesome defensively. Just catch and shoot threes. She's like a Danny Green. You know what I mean? Like great defensively. The second she gets the ball from behind the arc, she's gunning. And like that has made a huge difference for their spacing for Delle Donne. So, and that kind of comes back to the point about the modeling. Like the coaches that are embracing that stuff, like there's not as much of that edge anymore in the NBA because everyone knows about it, right?
Yeah.
And everyone can do it and is building the rosters to do it. WNBA hasn't gotten to that point yet. So when you have that edge of, your power forward hitting corner threes, like it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So you can, if I tried to make some notes about talking about people getting into this stuff, you can look into shot profile models, shot quality models, play-by-play stats.com, pbpstats.com has it for NBA, and some of that underlying data is available for WNBA. I think that's a great place to start for WNBA stuff is the coaching difference and talent difference from who's taking the shots and where they're taking them from.
Okay. All right. There are two more questions left, but I'm going to go with only one more because one of them is Celtics oriented. Sorry, necessary paper. The one that Boston Mo had asked about was your favorite basketball advanced stats, like which ones you focus on and why. Is that something you're willing to delve into?
Yeah, I like. There are a lot of really good player models out there that are public right now. Jake Goldstein has a great one in player impact, performance metric, PIPM. RPM just broke this year, so don't use that. BPM is by Daniel Myers, just got updated, BPM 2.0. It's a solid measure. Basically, what these try and measure is a general range of how many points per 100 possession a player is worth. So the better players, Giannis, LeBron's, Curry's, could be like the all NBA guys, somewhere up to 7, 8, 9 points, right?
Okay.
That'd be really high. All-star to really good role player level, you get, your 3 to 5, and then you just try and not have as many negatives as possible after that, really, right?
Okay.
So using those player models is a good start. Kind of evaluating, like I was talking about, replacement level stuff for injury people. That's what drew me to it, is being able to individually evaluate players. Baseball has a similar problem. I think Massimo mentioned, what's the difference between this baseball, or he was more familiar with baseball. Measuring defense is hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. There are NBA stats, single metric NBA stats that build in height, because naturally, if you're a taller person, you're a better defender. You can disrupt shots more. Isaiah Thomas can try as hard as he wants to be a good defender, but if Russell Westbrook has the ball, he's shooting over him 100 times out of 100.
Yeah, just holding the ball up. It's like holding the ball.
Right. It's like a dad in the kiddie pool, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's tough. So you can build in things like that and get a general idea of defensive impact, and that's something that the guys that I try and keep tabs on their research are trying to get better at evaluating. Some of the things with like centers, they're looking at shot deterrence, like instead of just field goal percentage when people shoot there. Someone like Embiid, Andrew Patton does a great job at showing that like people won't even take certain shots when he's on the floor because of how much space he covers. So those are the type of basketball analytics that are kind of becoming next level, and they're public. I'll definitely take a look into someone like Seth Partnow. He's the director of basketball research at the Bucks, and he's a great kind of like gateway drug to basketball analytics. Really dry humor, great guy, and promotes a lot of good work being done. And if you have any other questions about good sites and stuff, I'm always happy to share, what's public. We do some work that is private, as you mentioned.
Sure.
That we won't share, but a lot of it will come down to, and I did want to reference this. There's one last point. William Guo. I don't know if you recognize him.
Yeah, I follow him. I don't think he posts as much as he used to.
He doesn't.
But that name rings a bell, yeah.
Yeah, he does. Big player in some offshore markets in Asia Pacific region, I believe, and he wrote a great article called like "Setting the Record Straight: Basketball Sports Betting." But if you just search or ask me on Twitter for nylon calculus basketball betting, he goes into top down versus bottom up, player metrics versus team metrics, what's valuable, how much points are, he goes into how much points are worth to the spread, ways to beat line. That was like the turning point for me for understanding basketball analytics and how they relate to gambling markets. So I usually recommend that to people right off the bat. It's more succinct than anything I could do.
Sure. And you mentioned Seth. Yeah, I've had Seth on the pod, and he's a great, he's very full of information, and that was like one of the most deserved jobs that somebody could get from NBA Twitter, was him getting a job with the Bucks.
Yeah, Partnow, he's a good example of someone that didn't focus solely on quantitative stuff, but had a background. I think he was a lawyer background in something else, and was able to use that to communicate. And I do this a lot of my day job. Data communication and understanding and application is just as important as building the models. So he's a great resource. Yeah, if I had to pick one person off of basketball Twitter to kind of get into the mix, that he'd be way up there.
Yeah, definitely. I would second that.